I love Cebu, bahagi ka ng dughan ko. I love Cebu, ising ito ng kalibutan. Ang ngayon na ikaw ay pasigal buko. I love Cebu.
Malungkot na lugar, lumukod na ang di sa tasa. Di ka maguol, buot ang mga tao ang duol. Busa, asa pa ka, sigura ta. O higala, manuray ta. Di sa tasa, dali na.
I love Cebu, mahal di ka. I love Cebu, isingit ko ng kalimutan. I love Cebu, bahagi ka ng dughan ko. Isingit ko ng kalibutan. Ang ngayon na ikaw ay pasigal buko. I love Cebu. I love Cebu. I love Cebu. I love Cebu. Daw paraiso ang kaanindot mo. Ang mga tao wag kay ikareklamo. Bisag asa ko paingon, wag tuwas ang pagdait ko. Magpabilin ka, nindoghan ko. I love Cebu, bahagi ka ng dughan ko. I love Cebu, isingit ko ng kalibutan. Ang ngayon na ikaw ay pasigal buko. I love Cebu.
All right, from the sports capital of the South, Cebu, I love Cebu. It's Bleacher Talk goes live right here at the Facebook page, Bleacher Talk Cebu. Mayong gabi, kanatong tanan. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome once again to another episode of Bleacher Talk goes live. And today will be extra special because I have a special guest for you. One of our idols, no? Mga idol ni natong tanan ever since we were kids, literally. And again, I will not take any longer to bring him on and put him on board right now. Ladies and gentlemen, he's our idol, Sporting Chance, TV5. If you want to know how old I am, I even followed his columns in the old newspaper before Philippine Star. Please welcome the Dean himself, Quinito Henson.
Thank you very much, Rico, and good evening to all of our listeners, our viewers, especially to all my friends in Cebu. I miss you all. I miss Cebu. I wish I could visit, but I guess there will be a time for that.
There will be a time for our lechon for you. Don't worry. I will guarantee
Right.
that. Quinito, I always ask this of all our guests now, and it's standard introduction spiel. Fill in the blanks. Sports
Okay.
in this pandemic is blank.
It's a challenge. I think
Ooh.
it's a big challenge now for sports to get back on track. It's impressive that professional sports will be ongoing. I think the Chooks to Go 3-on-3 league will start ahead of the PBA restart. the Chooks to Go League will be starting in Calamba, Laguna in the
Yes.
Inspire Academy. So that will go on ahead. And once the IITF agrees with the proposal of the PBA to go on with the bubble, and prior to that, the 5-on-5 scrimmages, then we will have the PBA back on board as well. But it's been a challenge to get sports back on the court, back on track in this pandemic.
Okay, thank you for that, Quinito. And tonight, I promise you I'll stick to 1 hour, but I'll just have to give you a heads up. Normally we go beyond 1 hour, but sige lang, we'll try to squeeze everything
Anytime.
in. Okay,
I'm
that's what.
locked and loaded.
All right, thank you. That's what we're doing right now is we'll put it to three different, shall we say, modules. I told you we'll talk about the NBA playoffs, number one,
Okay.
the PBA bubble, then of course Chooks to Go 3x3 will be there, then the college off-season activities that have been very, they've been very more than just off-season. No? A lot of has been happening in college basketball.
Yes,
So
yes.
let's get down. Let's do it right now. NBA playoffs right now. Lakers are now 2-0. Let's talk first about the Lakers Denver series. I'm a Laker fan, but I prefer the Magic Johnson era. But then again, that shows our age also. But Anthony Davis' 3-point shot today had to be something. And if you were a Denver fan, it had to be heartbreaking. Your initial thoughts on that, Quinito?
Puerto Rico, I think it was a very deflating loss for Denver. I'm not even sure if they can come back from it and win even one game in this series. I'm looking at the Lakers sweep to go all the way to the last dance. But if you break down kung anong nangyari kanina in that game two between the Lakers and the Nuggets, I mean, I just feel for the lack of experience
Even one
as far
game.
as the Denver Nuggets are concerned.
Looking at the Lakers
You look at their lineup, they only have one player who's over 30 years old. That's Paul Millsap. He's
Yeah.
34 years old. Everybody else is less than 30. Jokic is 24. Jamal Murray is 22. These guys don't have the play of experience the Lakers have. You look at the Lakers lineup, they've got 8 players who are 30 and above. And LeBron James is the oldest, and he's 35. That means you've got 8 players in the 30 to 35-year-old bracket. They've got tons of experience. And with 2.1 seconds to go, I thought the Denver coach Malone made a big blunder in bringing in Plumlee. He took out Millsap, who I think is a better defender, but he wanted to get a tall guy in Plumlee to cover the basket. That guy's a rim protector, but he's not a perimeter defender. But his man, unfortunately, was Anthony Davis, who wasn't going to play inside. That guy's a perimeter shooter. So if you're expecting Plumlee to play defense against a perimeter shooter, forget it. He won't know what to do. And so when LeBron James set the pick for Anthony Davis, Plumlee didn't know what to do. His instinct told him, go under the pick. But he didn't even go all the way under the pick. He stopped in his tracks, thinking that Grant, who was defending LeBron James, would switch. Hindi naman nag-switch. I felt that if Millsap was there, he would have known better. He would have gone under the pick and make it difficult for AD to get the inbound pass from Rondo. I also thought that maybe Jokic should not have defended the inbounder. And ginawa ng Denver, they wanted a tall guy to distract Rondo from making a clean inbound. So they sacrificed Jokic. Now, if you're going to put in Plumlee, you might as well have Plumlee distract the inbounder, not a valuable defender, Yaka Jokic. So I thought that was another mistake. AD got a clean pass from Rondo, who's an excellent passer. He found the open guy, and it was too late for Jokic to close out rather, because he was defending the end line. So for him to go all the way out to defend a three-point shooter, that was just asking too much from Jokic. So, but I thought it was a great win by the Lakers. I thought it showed their experience. Remember, Lakers did not have a timeout to set that play. So they did it because they knew what to do. That experience factor with so many veterans on the floor for the Lakers, that made the difference.
You talk about it being a deflating loss. Now, how deflating is deflating? And you're even saying you're feeling, will Jalen Rose come out walis? No? Are you looking at the sweep right now?
It's very, very possible, unless unless the Lakers get complacent. Because
Okay.
one thing about the Denver Nuggets is that they're a very resilient team. Remember when they beat the Los Angeles Clippers in the second round? They lost game one in that series by 23. And they were down 1-3 in the series. They won that series. So in the Utah Jazz game, one of the games they lost to Utah in that series was a 37-point blowout. Again, Denver was down 1-3 in that series. They won that series. Denver is the only team in NBA history to come back from two 1-3 deficits back to back and win those two series. So, this is a very resilient team. I think it has a lot of promise because, as I said, it's a very, very young team, but very inexperienced. But against LeBron James and his supporting cast, AD, Rondo, Caruso, Kuzma, Pope. I mean, those guys can deliver. You put in Danny Green with his playoff experience as well, and it's going to be very tough to beat the Lakers in this series. I really doubt if Denver can come back strong from that deflating defeat. I'm not even sure if they can win one game in this series.
If they are to win one game, and you talk about the inexperience, and you said that Michael Malone had probably had that last minute blunder in the end game, what should they do? I mean, what can they do to win at least one game?
Well, the problem with Denver is that it's a two-man show.
Yeah.
You've got Jokic and Murray doing practically everything. They're getting some scoring from Michael Porter coming off the bench. But Porter is not my kind of guy. He's not a big time scorer. He had 15 points in game three in 19 minutes. So he's not getting the minutes. Will he produce more with more minutes? That's a question mark. I think he's too young. I think he's too soft to be able to make his presence felt. So essentially, Denver is a two-man show. And
Mhm.
against a fully loaded Lakers team, you cannot win with just two guys. I mean, in game three, Jokic had over 40 minutes and Murray had over 38 minutes. So those guys play a ton of minutes. For them to be able to give it their all over a long stretch, it's going to be asking too much from them. They need support. They're not getting it from Harris. They're not getting it from Grant. They're getting a little bit from Porter, but this Denver team has already overachieved by making it to the Western Conference Finals. I thought it was a huge upset that they beat the Clippers. I also think the Clippers would have given the Lakers more of a fight in the Western Conference Finals than the Nuggets. But in the NBA, you go to a game seven, it's 50-50. Anything can happen. And that's that was the nightmare that the Clippers faced in game number seven. They had an off night. Paul George wasn't there. Kawhi Leonard wasn't there. And how many games? How many games do you think in a game seven would Denver beat the Clippers? If you put 10 games, 10 game seven, Clippers versus Denver, how many games do you think the Denver Nuggets would beat the Clippers? I would say they would probably beat them maybe two out of the 10 games. And I would give the Clippers 8 out of the 10 games. But those two games, it happened. It happened in game seven of that series. And that's all it took for the Denver Nuggets. Malas lang yung the Clippers.
We talk about if this were a tennis match, Denver has probably gone through two straight 5-set matches. Is there a fatigue factor coming in? And even if they're younger, and are the Lakers fresher, even if they're all mostly about 30 years old?
Um, yeah, I think the Denver Nuggets should be a little fagged out, especially the two guys, because they're playing a ton of minutes, as I mentioned. Um, the distribution of minutes is not even with Denver because kulang na kulang sa suporta sina Jokic and Murray. And I feel for them. If they only had more reliable supporting guys, maybe we could expect a lot more from Denver. But as I said, they've already overachieved. I
Yeah.
didn't think they could beat Utah. I certainly didn't think they could beat the Clippers. And I must say, Sports Illustrated did not think that the Denver Nuggets could beat the Clippers because in this magazine, which is a preview of the 2019-20 season, Sports Illustrated picked the Los Angeles Clippers to win it all.
Yes, that's
So
true. That's true.
that's how it is. You know, when you make predictions, it's difficult. It's hit or miss, especially in the NBA, especially now in the bubble because it's so unpredictable with no team enjoying a home court advantage. Before the playoffs, I went out on a limb and I said the Lakers would play Miami in the finals, and I said the Lakers to win it all. Um, Miami because it's a sentimental favorite because we all know Spolstra, he's a Fulham, but I also think that the Heat did the right moves in the offseason. You know, they didn't make the playoffs last year,
That's
but
true.
look at where Miami is now. I mean, they finished number 5 in the Eastern Conference, and then what they did to Milwaukee, whom I described before the playoffs as the most overrated team in the
Yeah.
NBA, and sure enough, the Milwaukee Bucks didn't even get past 5 games against the Miami Heat in their playoff series. So it's been a very exciting series, certainly very unpredictable. Um, Boston is going to make a run. That game on Thursday, Game 4 between Miami and Boston, I consider that the most pivotal game in the series. If Miami wins, they'll be up 3-1, and that's just 1 foot away from making it all the way to the last dance. But if Boston wins, it's 2-all. It's back to scratch, and that's why it's pivotal. It's either 3-1 or 2-2, and I think it's 50-50.
Okay, let's go over to the East now that we're talking about Boston and Miami. Everybody thought, or not many people thought, that the Boston Celtics were a deeper team, and it seemed like fate would have it now because they're building towards the Eastern Conference Finals. Like you said, Miami didn't even make the playoffs last year. Ang Boston naman, paunti-unti siya. And supposedly, this should be their year to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. In the first 2 games, is it a case of Miami doing it and Boston not, or the other way around for the at least the first 2 games before Game 3 muna?
Yeah, I thought Miami did an excellent job in the first 2 games. They had more points in the paint. They went to their strong suit. They went to Adebayo, who I thought is unmatched by anyone from the Celtic side in the middle. I've always thought that Thies, who is an undrafted German player with the Boston Celtics, is their weak link. He's not an offensive threat. Also, his footwork is terrible. And Eric Spolstra knows that. And that's why you have the big guy of Miami up on top of the key. And then they have Dragic coming off the pick and roll. And so Boston switches, and they know that once this is on Dragic, Dragic is just going to take 2 steps away from him and score. And that's what they've been doing. So if it's not a mismatch on the pick and roll because of the speed factor, it's going to be Adebayo on the strength factor against Thies. So either way, Thies is a weak link with the Boston Celtics. And the fact that he's also not a scoring threat makes him more of a liability. But, having said that, when you've got a team with Jason Tatum, who's a budding superstar, he's only 22 years old, and
Yeah.
this man is a tremendous talent. And you've got a tough, rugged, feisty defensive stopper in Marcus Smart, who I can almost hear him say, "Smart ako." Uh, Simple lang.
Simple
But
lang.
Marcus Smart is a terrific player. He's an awesome defender, and he can get you points from the outside. But his strong thing is defense. You've got Jalen Brown, who can hit you inside and outside, and then you've got Kemba Walker, who is excellent in the perimeter. He's a tremendous playmaker, and he penetrates. He's able to get inside the defense. But so I thought that the Celtics are deep with those guys. Plus, they brought back Gordon Hayward in the
Right?
rotation for game number 3. So even if he only scored 6 minutes, he played rather 6 points. He played 30 minutes, which means Coach Brad Stevens is expecting a lot more from him in the coming games. So he has deepened the rotation of the Celtics. So this is a tough Celtic team. I think they have their shortcomings, their weak link, and I thought Miami did very well to exploit the weaknesses of the Celtics in both games 1 and 2 because hindi nga naglaro si Hayward, and this wasn't much of a factor. But in game 3, Hayward played, the rotation of the Celtics got deeper, I also thought that Miami played complacent. I thought they played listlessly.
Okay.
I didn't think they put in the effort in the rebounding department. They've been doing so well underneath the boards in games 1 and 2, but in game 3, they just gave up those rebounds. They gave up a lot of inside points, and I don't think the Miami Heat's heart was in the game. I thought Jimmy Butler did not play with heart, the same heart that he showed in games 1 and 2, the same heart that he showed when he played against the Milwaukee Bucks. So, it all depends. If Miami can bounce back from that loss in Game 3, if in Game 4 they play with the same kind of heart they showed in games 1 and 2, Gordon Hayward will not make a difference for the Celtics. The Celtics will lose. But if Miami panics a little bit, if now they think that they've opened the door for the Celtics to come in, it it may be a little difficult, because if those Miami shots don't fall from the outside, they could be in trouble against the Celtics in Game 4.
Yes. So to right now, Gordon Hayward seemed to be, well, the odd man out who wasn't present in games 1, 2. Numbers wise, it wasn't too impressive, but I think his presence made a little bit of a difference for the game 3 win. Your thoughts about that, and can he gradually improve his contributions for what could be a Boston win, if not a Miami win?
For sure, Gordon Hayward is a top-notch scorer. He's an A-grade player in the NBA, and during the regular season, he averaged over 30 minutes a game. So if he's in the flow, I think it'll be great for the Celtics, because they have a rotation where they can have Tatum, Smart, and Kemba Walker in the backcourt, and then Jalen Brown. He can play actually center, and then you can have Gordon Hayward play. So you don't need a Thies
Yeah.
in that rotation, that 5-man rotation. But they will sacrifice playing small. Now the big question is, will Brown playing center be able to contain Adebayo? He may not be able to do that. But the Celtics are a thinking team, just like the Heat. So they'll be able to make their adjustments defensively to make sure that the Heat find it a little difficult to score with Adebayo. But then again, if the Celtics defense is focused on Adebayo, who had 27 points in Game 3, what can you say about Tyler Hero?
Yeah.
He has been amazing for the Heat. This guy is a rookie. Duncan Robinson, another outside gunner who's only a sophomore. And you've got a 35-year-old in Dragic. And, that's what I mean when we're talking about Denver. They don't have the mix of veterans and young players. They have too many young and inexperienced players. But I thought that the Heat did very well in the offseason to bring in a guy like Jimmy Butler to take over from Dwayne Wade. And then they brought in Andre Iguodala because of his finals experience. And then they have young guys, new kids in the block like Tyler Hero, a sophomore like Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, also another rookie. So it's a mix of young blood and not so young blood. But that experience has done very well for Coach Eric Spoelstra. On the other hand, you've got a Celtics team that looks very determined. Everybody's very inspired to imagine a Boston versus Lakers finals. I mean, that's the classic rivalry.
Yeah,
Everybody
that's true.
wants to see that, and I think the Celtics know that in the deep in their heart, they want it to happen. They're a very determined team to make it happen, but they've got to be able to beat Miami in Game 4 to get that chance. Because if they fall to Miami in game number 4, I think Miami is going to go to the finals.
So from what we've seen so far, I'm a bit biased here because Paul just feel am, but coaching wise, and Brad Stevens is also a very bright coach. Can you see right now what coaches' minds can do now for the teams? Can you see what do you think is going on right now in the minds of Spo, in the mind of Brad Stevens, and how do they deal with it?
Well, basketball is a game of adjustments. I've always said that, whether you're in the NBA or in the PBA. And I think Spoelstra got the jump on Brad Stevens 2 times. But, having said that, while it's a game of adjustments, you also need players to play with poise and character. And if they lose their poise, if they lose their character, they fail to execute. So no matter how great a game plan you have, no matter how astute you are as a coach in making adjustments, if your players don't play with the poise, with the energy and the attitude to execute, you're not going to win. And I think that's what happened with Miami in game three. And Brad Stevens took advantage of the situation. Remember in game three, Miami did not lead a single time in that game. It was a wire to wire win by Boston. And that's very discouraging if you're Miami. You've got to find a way to win. While Miami did come back from 20 points down to make it 5 points with about, 4 minutes to go, 3 minutes to go, um, coming back from such a big deficit takes so much out of you. And so down the stretch, nagkulang na ang Miami, no? And Boston still had so much left, so much gas left in its tank to win, flying away. So I really think that coaching makes a difference, but the players on the floor, they've got to be able to execute. Um, you know, having also said that about coaching, you go back to the Lakers. With the Lakers, you don't need too much coaching from Frank Vogel because you've got a LeBron James. Come on, he's the coach. He's the guy who chooses the players. He's the guy who tells the players what to do on the floor. He tells you who your defensive assignments are. He gets mad at you if you don't do the right thing on the floor. Frank Vogel is the assistant coach in that team. LeBron James is the playing coach. That's all I have to say.
So true, so true. No? Uh, you talk about you know how there are so-called what you call script writers and the gods of the sport. Everybody is hoping for an LA Boston finals because of tradition.
Yes.
Whether it be from Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, then panahan ko, of course, I'm biased for Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Larry Bird, and all that. How does that play along with something like this? Because people start saying everybody wants an LA Boston finals. Miami can't come in. Is there such a thing as a fairy tale story like that?
Well, yes, of course, everybody dreams of that classic rivalry to get Boston and the Lakers back on the final stage. I mean, that's a dream come true. It's like you're going back to how it was years ago, how it was in, 2008 when Boston beat the Lakers. And then the Lakers, of course, came back and then they beat Boston. So that's a classic rivalry, and everybody wants to see that. But of course, Coach Spo doesn't like to see that. Pat Riley wouldn't want to see that. And
Yes.
Jimmy Butler, he's a man possessed now. If his head is on, his head is screwed in the right place, Jimmy Butler is a tremendous player. Did you see some of those defensive things that he did in Game Two of the
Yes,
Boston
yes,
series?
that's true. Yes.
Falling out of bounds, scooping that ball, keeping it alive, and then scooting over to the basket to get a pass for an easy dunk. I mean, Jimmy Butler can be an amazing player if he wants to. In
Yes.
game three, I didn't see that intensity from Jimmy Butler. So he's got to be consistent. He's got to play with his heart on his sleeve every single game
Yeah.
because in the NBA, as I've always said, every game is 50-50
Yeah.
because the teams are so loaded with talent. You can never take any team lightly. And if you lower your guard, you can get knocked out. And
Yeah.
that's what happened to Miami in game three.
So true, so true. Before I move on to the next section, because I know we have number of topics, a question here from the fans, from the people. Alan Chuachoy, he also writes for the Freeman, by the way. Quinito.
Okay.
Do you ever
Ayan,
think if Denver gave Ball some playing time, he could have been effective in giving some rest time for the Joker or for Jokic?
yeah, Ball is he's an exceptional, promising player. I would call him a project. Um, I think he needs to bulk up. Um, I don't think he'll be a match for any of the Laker big guys. I think he won't be a match, unfortunately, for either Dwight Howard or JaVale McGee. They'll just push him out. Um, and So maybe that's in the back of the mind of Coach Malone. Maybe that's why he's giving him just sparse minutes. He did play a few minutes previously, but um, you know, I think he'll be a liability on the floor.
Okay.
He's too young. Maybe with a little more maturity, he may be a factor. But you know, I wouldn't gamble on my future with ball. I would go with somebody else. And you know, with the Lakers, I failed to mention this, but I'd like to mention it also now. Um, they play a defensive scheme where Davis is up on top, knowing that Jokic plays the outside.
Yeah.
And when that happens, Davis doesn't mind taking on a Murray. And when Davis is on Murray, you don't need to double team him. So, the Lakers can get LeBron James and Dwight Howard or JaVale McGee down low and have AD playing the perimeter on defense, and he'll be a mismatch for anyone whom he's guarding, whether it's Jokic or Murray. Also, AD is being used to defend on the double. So, I mean, that's how versatile he is. Um, when the Lakers need to double like a Murray, if AD is not on Murray, and if he needs to double on Murray, for sure, when AD comes over to Murray, the first thing that Murray will have in mind is to release the ball. And that's the whole idea. The Lakers do not want Murray to handle that ball, to touch the ball. So when he sees AD coming in for a double team, he's going to release. And if you funnel well, you'll know where that release pass is going to. You can deflect it. When you've got quick players like Danny Green and Rondo, you can deflect it and you can score in transition right away. But, that's the beauty of this Laker team. They have too many big guys who
Yeah.
can hurt you defensively more than just defensively. And that's why, in answer to Alan's question, I think against a very experienced and talented front line of the Lakers, maybe Ball might be a little bit mismatched,
Yeah.
even if he just plays a few minutes to spell Jokic.
Okay. One more question before I share some comments, and I'd like to throw this thought at European style basketball is starting to come in. The Toronto Raptors play that way. A lot of ball rotation, a lot of ball movement away from the ball. Miami Heat does it as well, and so does Brad Stevens of Boston. Are we now seeing it coming back to the NBA vis-a-vis the one-on-one isolation type of thing? Are we seeing it now?
I think so. Rico, no, I see the NBA evolving, and the coaches are learning a lot from the European style of play because in Europe, you know, players almost are positionless.
Yeah.
Your fives are playing ones or threes. Your fives are shooting threes. So there's no defined role any longer. So it's all a matter of game planning and schemes that each coach comes up with. So, um, that kind of thinking has revolutionized the NBA, and it's a very welcome change because, the NBA can't get stuck into thinking that American basketball is king because let's face it, it's not. It's not. It may be king in some international competitions, but when you've got very talented European teams with bigs like the Serbians and the Spaniards, you know, they can make a major statement in the Olympics, and they have, and in the World Cup of FIBA. But it's nice to see the zone defense being used a lot
Yeah.
more in the NBA now. I've always been a fan of the zone defense, and Miami's been doing it, and the Lakers also sometimes do it. I think the Boston Celtics have also done it. So it's a welcome change. Let's have innovation. Let's have something new. We want the game to be very unpredictable. We don't want players to just go isolation and one-on-one. You want a lot of movement, very dynamic movement and mobility from the players. And that's what we're getting. One thing about Coach Herrick is that in the times that he has come to the Philippines, he has actually consulted Coach Raiko Toraman, Coach Tim Cone, and many of us other friends here. I have seen Coach Eric go to some practices of the PBA with a paper and a pen,
Wow.
jotting down notes. I've seen it. I've seen it. And that's how Eric Spoelstra is. His mind is open to always learn. Um, and that's what makes him a good coach. He sees that it's not just about X's and O's. He also sees it's about interacting with the players. So that's why his exposure to the international field, his exposure to the PBA, his frequent consultation with Coach Tim Cohn, all of that enters his consciousness, and it's showing in the way he's
Yes,
coaching.
that's true. Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing. And we all know that the NBA is the world's biggest stage for basketball. That's where the best teams play. But we're also saying that FIBA in the World Cup is also getting a lot of the teams to play at a very, very high level. And especially when you come down to the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the final, um, and the NBA players who play for their respective national teams in the FIBA World Cup, they bring their talents over, and vice versa. And that's what makes basketball such a beautiful game, and that's why we all love it.
Let's hold that thought because I'll ask the same question when we move to our PBA topic. But before I do that, I'd like to read out some comments first now. So, Jonas Panerio says, "Let me just share this here with Sir Quinito. I grew up watching Mr. Henson pang tawag ko, especially on those NBA games on GMA pa. I always told my dad growing up that I was going to be like Mr. Henson. Thanks for inspiring me, sir." Jonas Panerio. Thank you. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jonas. Thank you. I remember those days, NBA and GMA.
GMA
I
pa.
used to hold, I used to hold contests, and I used to, give away a lot of NBA merchandise. And I used to do a lot of gimmicks at halftime. I would open the show, do a halftime thing, and then I would end the show. And I would write all the scripts, and it was almost like a one man show. And at halftime, I would do a lot of gimmicks. Like I remember once, and my wife never forgave me for this. I kind of surprised the audience because I was wearing long pants, and then I brought down my pants because I had on the pants, the jersey pants of
Okay.
I think the Philadelphia 76ers. I
Okay.
wanted to show the Allen Iverson pants. And so I brought down my long pants, and lo and behold, I had the Philadelphia 76ers pants underneath. And of course, my wife said, "Never do that again." But I thought of all those gimmicks, trying to make the NBA a little more enticing.
True. Yes.
At that time, we were only doing one NBA game a week, and the hunger factor was tremendous. But now we're so fortunate that we're getting a lot of NBA games. We're watching every single conference finals games live, and hats off to Signal TV5 and One Sports for making that happen. Especially now during this pandemic, we're able to watch these games and enjoy every single second of the action.
Yeah,
And
true, true.
thanks, Jonas. Thank you for that.
Jonas, I'd like to share with you. We're both fans of Quinito. My first encounter with Quinito, I will say around 20 pounds ago. I will not say how old I was then. I'm not sure if you remember this, Quinito. We had a chat before. I was still a student then, and then I don't know how, but you started asking for assistance to help you out because precisely it was a one-man show for you, writing scripts and all that. And I ended up calling you. We did chat, but somehow I couldn't get over because I think you were in Parañaque then. I was in Diliman. It was kind of far. Then I was a provinciano from Cebu who did not know how to go to Parañaque at that time. But again, sige. I'll bump into Quinito sooner or later, and here we are. I'd like to close that first segment first. That's NBA pa lang, because we have 3 topics today. We'll close it up. Unless you have one more thing to say about the NBA before we move to the next topic.
I just want to be able to say that Game 4 of the Miami Boston series is going to be extremely pivotal,
Yun. Yeah.
and with the Lakers Nuggets series, um, I'm hoping that the Nuggets can come back to steal at least one game. But the high probability is the Lakers are in for a sweep. So I think it's been a very exciting playoff so far, and we still have a lot more games to watch. So hang in there and stick it out with the NBA because we're getting tremendous action.
Oh, definitely. It'll be a whole lot of fun for the next 2 to 3 weeks now until the end of the NBA Finals. All right, change topic po tayo ngayon. We move on to the PBA naman, the PBA bubble. First question is, what do we know so far about the PBA bubble? Because we know IATF is 50-50. It seems like, the way I see it, parang PR gimmick pa. But will that pressure the ITF to say yes? Your thoughts about this, and what do we know so far about the PBA bubble?
Well, the PBA is still awaiting the approval from the IATF, but my understanding is the go signal is forthcoming, and the PBA Commissioner Willie Marshall, PBA Chairman Ricky Vargas, PBA Vice Chairman Bobby Rosales, they held a Zoom press conference just a few days ago, and they all mentioned that if the IATF approval comes in by September 26th, then 5-on-5 scrimmages can commence immediately after. The approval, by the way, is not just for the restart, but prior to that, the 5-on-5 scrimmages, because at the moment, the PBA is still not allowed to do 5-on-5 scrimmages. The only thing that the IATF has allowed is for the PBA teams to do limited individual workouts. That's 4 players in a batch of 5 at any one time. So the PBA needs to be able to get approval to do 5-on-5 scrimmages, and then after that, they will need approval from the IITF to do the season restart. But fingers crossed, October 9 is the target date for the PBA to restart, and this will be in the Clark bubble. Now, the bubble situation means that the players will be quarantined, or rather will be cloistered in this bubble condition in Clark. They will be staying at the Quest Hotel. This was the Mimosa before, and all the teams, all the PBA personnel will be accommodated in this facility. The Basis Conversion Authority head, CEO Vince Dizon, has given his 100% support for the bubble. The Clark Development Authority or Corporation CEO, Noel Manangkil, has also given his 100% support to the PBA to make sure that testing will be done within the bubble. There will be high level hospital standard protocols in the practice tents that will be set up. The games will be played at the Angeles University Gym, which is an air conditioned facility, about a 10-minute ride outside of the bubble. So, yeah, so it's not exactly a replica of the NBA bubble in Orlando, because in the NBA, all the players are inside this bubble. That's also where they play the games. In the PBA version, the players will live in the bubble. They will practice in the bubble, but they will play the games outside the bubble, 10 minutes away by car. And that will be the Angeles University Foundation. How often the players will be tested will depend on what protocols the Department of Health will impose. If the Department of Health says testing will be done every day, then so be it. The players will be tested every day. In the NBA, the players are tested every night. So I guess if the NBA can do it, the PBA will do it, but it all depends on what the DOH requires. As far as the teams are concerned, they will be given a limit of 25 per team to enter the bubble. And that includes a regular lineup of 15 players plus an option to add a 16th player. So a maximum of 16 players for a 25-member team to enter the bubble. The 25-member team will include the coach, the assistant coach, the ball boy, utility, etc. So 15 or 16 players plus the additional coaching staff and then the utility staff to make 25 players. No more than 25 will be allowed. Also, once you're inside the bubble, if you're one of the 25, you cannot get out of the bubble. If you get out of the bubble, you will not be able to return. Now,
Oh,
assuming Rico, that the games will start on October 9 and 5-on-5 scrimmages will be started by September 27, assuming IATF approval, then right now the deadline is September 23rd at 5 p.m. The PBA is giving all the teams the leeway to, number one, sign free agents to bolster their lineups, and number two, renew expired players' contracts. but no trades will be allowed. So you're only talking of a very, very small window from actually starting from 2 days ago until the 23rd. That's the only time when free agents may be signed and when contracts may be renewed. So uh, my understanding is so far only one free agent has been signed. Blackwater's Chris Javier has been signed by TNT, and
Yes.
that's because TNT lost Kelly Williams. So they need someone to take his place in the center rotation. So Chris Javier has stepped in to that rotation. But, you know, there are many other free agents available. Sol
That's true.
Mercado is
Yes,
available.
that's true.
R.R. Garcia is available. PJ Simon is available. Sonny Toss
Mm.
has retired, but Sonny Toss would have played one more conference before retiring. So I don't know if Barangay Ginebra will not have Greg Slaughter playing for the team. So there is an open slot for a center in Barangay Ginebra, and Sonny Toss used to play for Coach Tim Code. So maybe he could be a possibility for Ginebra. We don't know. That's really up to the teams to pick up whoever free agents they need from now until the 23rd, which is a deadline that the PBA has set.
Now, for the media, for all of us here, Kinito, this I feel is the clear definition of making a forecast on paper. We're literally making a forecast on paper because we haven't seen any scrimmages, we haven't seen any tune-up games or exhibition games or friendly games. So how do we? I'd like to ask you, no, as an analyst, how do we make a forecast or even try to make a prediction? I read an article that said NLEX is favored. So my question is, how can
Oh,
somebody make I forget what it said. How can somebody even write about a team being favored when we haven't seen any preseason games, any reports about serious injuries? We don't even know the condition of the athletes. So, as a writer, how do we go about this?
it's very, very difficult because the PBA will not allow any preseason games. They
Mm,
will only allow 5-on-5 scrimmages within the team, but they
yes,
will not allow teams to play against each other in warm ups before the season restart. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is right now in the training protocol that the PBA has, it's not a bubble. It's not even a semi bubble.
yes.
It's what you call a closed circuit
Close
system,
second.
where players go from home to practice facility back to home. So if there will be team versus team preseason games, you will break out of of that that shell, so to speak, no, that closed circuit. Now you will have two teams coming together from their different closed circuit systems, and then playing against each other. Um, that's very dangerous. There is a risk factor involved, and
Yeah.
that's the reason why the PBA commissioner is ruling that out. He's saying that you can do maybe some tune-ups, maybe if every team is already in the bubble.
Yeah.
That way you can impose your protocols in the bubble. But for the time being, it's not being allowed. But in answer to your question, yes, it's very, very difficult. I have here um, a list of the players for every team, and I
Okay.
look at it every night, and I'm telling myself, which team is favored? You've got a team like Rain or Shine, for instance, and they're coming in with four rookies, four very highly talented rookies. But you wonder, will they be gelling with the veterans? Um, James Yap is coming out of a 3 to 4 month vacation in Italy. Will he be in shape to be playing in the PBA bubble? Um, there are also a lot of veterans who've moved teams. TNT, for instance. Some players who've moved teams are Simon and Ciso, who came in from Alaska. Ed Dakiwag has moved in. And then they also have a rookie in Kid Montalvo. So, a lot of question marks. Phoenix, they brought in Brian Eruela. Jake Pascual is not able to play because of his ACL condition. But they've added J.R. Reyes. So, you know, a lot of things, a lot of very exciting things. But in making a forecast as to which team is favored, I guess you can say which teams are intact. because that's your
Okay,
starting point.
that makes
You know,
sense. Yes.
in any conference, you always look which teams are intact, which teams can guarantee you chemistry. Um, so, you like to look at Barangay Ginebra because
Of course.
they are the last champion team of the PBA. They've got a lot of pieces intact, but they're not playing with Greg Slaughter.
Mhm.
So, that's a question mark. San Miguel, um, they didn't make it um, to a Grand Slam last year. They were one conference
Yes.
championship shy of a Grand Slam, but the records will show San Miguel is the only team with a win in this season so far. They've only played one game, and San Miguel won that game handily against Magnolia. So Coach Leo Austria is looking to rebound from the third conference. So San Miguel, you can't say that it's not going to be competitive, because I think it will be. Um, you like Northport and what they've done to their team. They've got Sean Manganti. They brought in L.A. Revilla. They've got Ren Subido. And Pido Harencio is a tough
Oh
nut.
yes. Oh
He's
yes.
a, he's a great coach. And I think now that Bolek is back in action, Jonathan Gray is back in action. So this long respite because of the pandemic has done them well, because Bolek and Gray probably would not have been able to play until the third conference if the season went on without the pandemic. But now they're okay. So Northport is very excited to bring them back. I think Columbian has also got Roosevelt Adams, and any team that has a CJ Perez will be competitive.
Of
That's
course.
for sure. So you go on down the line, you've got even a team like Blackwater. I'm not even sure if they're going to be called Bossing.
Bossing.
I
Yes.
think I think that's the nickname that they're thinking of using. But I'm curious to find out whether that Phelan, 35 years old, rookie, Maurice Shaw, is going to
Yes.
make a difference. He's a big guy. Um, People are saying that he may not be as talented as some people are saying, but if you're a big guy, and if you're a veteran like him with a lot of experience, you can't discount him making an impact, especially with a team that has a Mac Bello. And,
Yes.
they also have um, well, they brought in John Gabriel. They've got Ron Dennison, and more than that, they've got a new coach in Nash Rosella. You know that Nash Rosella is a championship type of coach,
Oh
and he
yes.
knows how to whip a team together in making a run for the championship. So I don't know whether this is going to be Blackwater's conference, but they're going to be fighting. Nash Rosella is a coach who is a fighting coach, and you can expect the same thing from his team. He's very, very contagious when it comes to that fighting intensity.
Which brings me to the carryover question I have from the NBA. You're saying the NBA has also been innovative. They've also blended. They've also
Yeah,
adjusted to the Euro type
yeah.
of ball, a game
Mhm.
rather. But the knock on Philippine basketball is that we copy too much the American style. Isolation. Play one is me. Play two is you. Play three is you. It's just if I don't have a shot, oh, ikaw na. If you don't have a shot, ikaw na. If the NBA is doing that, well, personally, I haven't seen the PBA go towards that yet. But are we seeing it now among other coaches? Because I know that the Tab Baldwin controversial statement was there and all that. It raised a few feathers here and there. But he did. I felt that he did have a point. But can the PBA, or should the PBA rather, go that way?
I think the PBA is going to be adapting to the international standards, uh, just like the NBA has
Yeah.
adapted to international standards. And the more exposure we get to the FIBA World Cup, to the FIBA Asia Games, the more our coaches are seeing how well our players can adapt and
Yes.
adjust to this new system. And I'm seeing it. I'm really seeing it. I think we have a lot of very creative and innovative coaches. And the challenge in the PBA is that you've got 12 teams and they just face each other all the time.
Yes, that's true.
So the challenge is even more because you have to keep on thinking. These teams inside out because kokonti lang sila eh. So that's why you've got to be even more innovative in the PBA than in the NBA, because in the NBA you have 30 teams. So um, you can you can do the same thing over again 30 times against 30 teams. But in the PBA, you can't do the same thing against 12 teams because you play them over game in game out. So that means you have to be more creative and more innovative. I'm seeing that. I'm seeing with the PBA coaches, I think we see a lot more coaches who are very communicative, who are very interactive with their players. Um, some coaches may not be too strong when it comes to the technical aspects of the game, but they make up for it because they have a very good feel and instinct for the game, when to bring in the players, when to take advantage of the mismatch, when to design a play that would give you the edge in terms of your strength against your opponent's weakness. Um, I think the value of a Filipino coach is that he is a very adaptable coach.
Okay.
I just want to see more of our coaches exposed to the international game, because I think sky's the limit when it comes to our coaching ability. Um, even in the collegiate game, you see a lot of coaches who are, very, very innovative. Um, and in the PBA, we have a lot of young coaches and experienced coaches. You've got a coach, Tim Cohn, who's showing the way for the next
Yeah.
generation, showing the way to tell them how to be a championship coach, what it's like to be technically advanced and at the same time opening your heart to your players so that your coach is on the same page with the players and vice versa. Um, that I think is the plus factor of the Filipino coach. Yung Filipino coach mas may puso
Okay.
um, than maybe a foreign coach.
Yeah.
And I think that's something you can teach. Up here, the technology, you can learn that. You can learn that anytime. But up down here in your heart, that's something you can teach. That's something innate with a
Yeah.
Filipino coach. And that's our advantage. That's our advantage. I'm not selling short our foreign coaches. I embrace um,
Yeah.
the gains that we've had with our foreign coaches. I think Mark Dickel did a good job in leading us in the FIBA Asia qualifiers last February against Indonesia. That 100-70 victory was resounding. Um, I think Tab Baldwin did an excellent job in Changsha when he took the Philippines to second place in the FIBA Asia Cup. I thought Raiko Toraman also had this
Of course.
great
Yeah.
point, so we learned from him as well. But Chot Reyes, the achievements that he
Oh
did,
yeah.
I think are historic. Yang Giao for taking us, a possession short of winning the game against Angola in the
Overtime.
last World Cup. Um, and imagine, we played in the last World Cup with a bloated Andre Blatch.
Yes.
Um, Andre Blatch in 2019 in the FIBA World Cup was not the same Andre Blatch who played for us in 2014. And still, we almost beat Angola. And you know, I thought that I thought we played competitively. We didn't win a single game, but I also thought that Jordan Clarkson should have played for the Philippines in the
Yes.
World Cup and not Andre Blatch. I guarantee you, well, of course, it's hindsight now. I guarantee you, if Jordan Clarkson played for the Philippines in the 2019 FIBA World Cup, we would have won at least two games.
2 games. Okay.
Two
Interesting.
games. Angola would have been a sure thing. And I think with Jordan Clarkson, he would have made a difference with one of the other games that we lost.
That's
And
Italy and Serbia.
that's my personal thing. That's my
Yes.
Jordan Clarkson should have played in that game, even if he's shorter than Andre Blatch. With what Andre Blatch showed,
Yeah.
with the listlessness
Yes.
that he showed, that he was out of shape, it was just a disgrace.
Yes.
Andre Blatch um, is history as far as Philippine basketball is concerned.
We talked about
Sorry
the
to say that. Sorry to say
no,
that.
no problem. The internationalization of the game. I've always felt there's one thing I've always felt that the PBA should do, but I see them not very open to it. I'm not sure if your thoughts about this, but I've always felt if we want to open up to the world type of game, the internet international game, I've always felt like you said, would they only play each other, the 12 teams? Why can't we somehow open up also and go outside the Philippines? Although the East Asia thing is there already, the FIBA Asia Champions Cup is there already, but it's not. It's not. It's here and there. But are there any talks at all, or has anybody even thought about if you talk about exposure, let's bring the even the pro teams outside in the same way that Korea does that and all that. Your thoughts about that, please?
Totally agree, Rico. No? I think international exposure is a great thing because it enhances and enriches our experience. And you bring that back to the PBA. You become better players. Coaches become more knowledgeable because their minds are open to new things. Um, I think the opportunity that the East Asia Super League will give us is tremendous. But that won't be until October of 2021. I think FIBA has given us an opportunity to play in the international realm with all of these windows. But you're talking of the national team lamang, no? I
Yeah.
would like to see our clubs compete internationally too.
Yes.
There is such a thing as the FIBA Champions Cup that happens once a year, but it conflicts with the schedule of the PBA.
Yes.
Perhaps one thing is maybe we can bring back that yung dating ginagawa ng PBA where they invite foreign
Yes.
teams to play
True. Yeah.
in a conference. It's costly, but I think it's something that we might want to consider maybe pakatapos na ng pandemic, because I would like to see other teams, not just the top tier teams, exposed to international competition, to foreign players. So, like the East Asia Super League, that will only give an opportunity for the top two teams of the PBA to
Yes.
play.
That's right.
What about the others? No? What about the number 12 team, the number 11 team? I would also like to see them expand their knowledge, to broaden their horizons by getting them a chance to play internationally. And maybe we can do that if it's too much to ask for our players to go abroad and play internationally. Maybe those foreign teams can come over and they can play competitively in the PBA, or we can even do like a pocket tournament of some sort.
Yeah.
It's certainly something to consider. And I guess when this pandemic is over, it's something that maybe the PBA board will study. What you like about the PBA board, our PBA commissioner, is that they're always thinking out of the box.
Great.
Kanina, you mentioned that the PBA seems to be always following what the NBA is doing in terms of style of play, yung isolation, etc. Um, I also think that the NBA is picking up some things from the PBA, even if it doesn't admit it. The twice to beat advantage has been a playoff system with us for the
Yes.
longest time.
That's so true.
And
So true.
the NBA did it in the bubble for the first time. They didn't call it twice to beat advantage. They called it a play-in system.
Playing that. That's true.
Um, but also, the idea of changing referees
Yes.
during a game, I think that innovation is tremendous. Tremendous. Um, the NBA already has 4 referees per game, but one is on standby only if there is an injury or if one referee is incapacitated. But they go with 3 referees. What's to stop the NBA from saying, hey, if in the course of a game, um, the head of the supervisor of officials is saying one of the 3 referees may not be up to par in terms of what he's calling or what he's missing. Maybe a change during the game might be something to improve the
Yes.
quality of the officiating. We're doing that now in the PBA. No other league in the world is doing it, and I think it's a tremendous innovation. The PBA thought of that, and hats off to the PBA for that. No, So, and there are many other things like the landing spot rule.
Yes.
Dati, in the NBA, they didn't really consider it too much, and they weren't calling it a flagrant foul. But then the NBA is also monitoring us. Believe me, they
Oh,
are. And here, as you all know, a landing spot foul um, could be a flagrant two if it's of dire
yes,
consequence.
yes.
If it's a flagrant, it could be a flagrant one if there is no dire consequence, but there is contact. Um, but the NBA is now seeing how dangerous a landing spot foul could be,
That's
and
true.
so now they're calling it a flagrant. They're really calling it a flagrant, whereas before, baliwala sa kanila, ordinary foul lang.
That's true.
So there are many things that the PBA is doing because we have such brilliant basketball minds in this country. Believe me, I'm not just talking of the officials. From the tweets I get
Yeah.
in my Twitter account, when I say something that is controversial and is disputed, believe me, I get a ton of tweets coming from basketball passionate fans out
Yeah.
there who want to share their opinions. And they try to disprove me. If I'm wrong, I certainly will accept it. I'm not Superman. I don't have all the answers all the time. I'm only human. But it's the sharing, it's
Yeah.
the communicative process. I think our basketball minds in this country are tremendous, are tremendous, and we're seeing it in the PBA. We've done some innovations that are clearly putting the PBA in step with the world's best leagues. We're coming up with things that other leagues, I think, should emulate, especially that rule about referees coming in to change
Mhm.
a referee who may not be doing a good job on the floor.
Yeah, I have fun. I've been to a PBA game once, and I sat beside the commissioner's row. Deputy Commissioner Eric, they're usually with Eric Castro. Then Conway is here. Then Eric Castro is like the coach of the referees, and he taps the back of the person. You go in. That's how the referees. It's fun looking at that. Kinito, I'd
You know,
have to go to the. Yeah, go ahead,
yeah,
please. Yeah.
I was saying that it's amazing to work with these guys. Um, Deputy Commissioner Eric Castro and Commissioner Willie Marshall are such basketball fans themselves
Ah,
that
yes.
when I call them at 11, 11:30, 12 midnight, or send them a text, I get an answer all the time, 100%. Eric Castro, Commissioner Willie, also because they're good friends and they're close friends, and we share the same passion. And it's you know it's it 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 makes me feel so good,
Yeah.
um, to know that I can reach out to the commissioner and the deputy commissioner and share thoughts, and for them to also confide in me, and for me to confide in them. It's a great thing, no? Because I think this relationship that we all have in the basketball community is a shared thing.
Yes.
We all love the game, so we all want this game to prosper and to be appreciated by all the fans.
I can vouch for that. 2 weeks ago lang, I was in touch with Coach. I call him Coach Eric and Combili. I was telling Combili I'd like to talk, etc., and all that. Can I? The usual. May I talk? May I call you? And all that. The next text I got was from Coach Eric telling me, Rico, off yung phone mo. Combili is trying to call you. Huh? Ano ba? Then Combili also texts me, Rico, why is your phone off? I'm trying to call you. So, sorry. So I had to go outside the house to make sure I had good signal. I called Combili. Combili, sorry. It ended up, ako pa nag-apologize. No, sorry, Combili, my phone is
So,
off. So, he said like that, no? But anyway, let's, again, comments, okay? This one is from Dr. Dilbert Bonisit. May I ask your opinion on how to make regional basketball league work like the NBA before? Take note, you're coming from Cebu people, okay? And you know how big Don Ontiveros was here with the Cebu Gems and all that, Rob Wainwright and all that. So your thoughts, please.
well, yeah, it's very difficult logistically speaking,
Yes.
and the NBA was a beautiful concept, but in the end, what brought down the NBA was logistics. It just became so difficult to be able to coordinate and make things happen when you have to go from place to place. Um, Maybe there's a solution, but I guess the NBA was ahead of its time, and that solution didn't come on time. The MPBL, I thought, was a good step towards that. I think Senator Manny Pacquiao um, is also a very innovative thinker. And for him to put this thing together, um, getting different provinces to support home teams in a competitive atmosphere, in a game that we all love. I thought that was a very, very big thing, a very big blessing that rather that Senator Manny Pacquiao did for all of us. But, again, it became a matter of logistics. 31 teams in the MPBL became a very unwieldy thing. Um, we heard of a lot of talk about, game fixing, gambling. Of course, the senator put his foot down right away and made sure to clean up whatever mess there was. But for that even to have gone to a first step meant that, it's a logistical challenge to do it. Um, I would like the PBA someday to have regional representation,
Okay.
and that would be ideal. I would like to have maybe a regional elimination um, among teams from the south, and then teams in the north, something like that. No,
Yeah.
something like that to be able to get representation, because right now the PBA, the teams do not represent any areas. It's a commercial league, so they represent companies, and the companies and the games are all Metro Manila based, and there's a reason for that. It's easier, logistically speaking, to be able to manage a league, and it's also easier to put together a production team to make sure that every game is covered widely. Um, but at the same time, you'd like to see some kind of representation from the
Yeah.
different regions. Um, Maybe, I'm just thinking out loud here, because I've never really given this much thought. So I think it's a great question, by the way. Um, Perhaps the PBA D League could be
Okay.
some kind of a way for the PBA to reach out to the regions. If the PBA D League is going to be a farm system, as it is, we have the Aspirants Cup and the Foundation Cup, both of which prepare amateurs to become pros, and very open, of course, to collegiate teams, as what we know in the Aspirants Cup. But maybe um, to give the regions representation in the PBA D League would be a major step forward. Um, that will make the regions closer to the PBA, and I think it will also make the PBA scouts and coaches open their eyes to the talent out there, because believe me, there's a lot of talent in the provinces. Beyond Metro Manila, the talent in basketball is amazing. It's amazing. Um, I just feel that, and I know we're going to talk about collegiate leagues later on. I just feel that homegrown talents should be given more of a priority than going abroad
Okay.
and looking for field foreigners,
That's true.
because here is where we have homegrown talents that we want to see them blossom to become big time pros. And maybe one way we can do it is to open up the PBA D League to regional representation, just so we get the regions closer to the PBA. PBA, maybe it will be difficult to have regional representation there, because I said the nature of the PBA on the premier level is to have commercial teams
Yeah.
play in Metro Manila. So maybe that's a given. But for us to be able to make the regions closer to the PBA, perhaps there may be a way through the PBA D League. But I'm sure Commissioner Willie and the PBA board will look into that for in the future, and maybe something can be done about it.
Well, remember, Kinito, around 2 or 3 years ago, the PBA board did announce it. Remember, the PBA board said that the PBA D League will set up PBA D League Visayas, PBA D League Mindanao. But that was already thought of. It was more of the rolling out thing, and I guess the pandemic did help. But to speak of talent, no, in the South, this guy we call him the goat, Kinito. He can't play anymore due to age, but this guy Paul Hoven is who we call the goat. Never played Manila, but played a lot here in Cebu. Now playing Panalay, but of course he's over the peak right now. So Paul Hoven, our goat here in Cebu. Hello.
Yeah.
All right. Then,
Rico, there are many guys like that, especially in the US. Yung mga streetball talents nila who never made it to the NBA, but are legends. But are
yeah,
legends. And, it breaks my heart that they never got an opportunity to display their wares before a national audience. And, I feel that there should be a way for those talents to emerge and to be recognized. And, you mentioned about the PBA D League having regional representation. Yeah, I seem to recall something like that. But um, if something like that can be rolled out, as you aptly put it, Rico, no, I think it'll be a great thing
oh yeah,
because that will address the need for us to give recognition to our talents outside of Metro Manila and
yeah,
get them closer to the
yeah,
PBA.
yeah,
That's
for
the
sure.
whole thing. I mean, that's the whole essence of the PBA being a national Premier League.
Yeah.
To get everyone involved, and I think that's a great idea, and I think it should be pushed.
And I keep reminding people, don't forget the real goat right now, who will most likely be Jumar Fajardo, happens to come from Cebu, and he played a large part of his career here in Cebu before moving up to Manila. Kinito, I have to show this to you as well. If you remember John Pius, he's the president of our Sports Writers
Yes,
Association in Cebu. Remember him? Saying hello
yes,
lang.
yes.
All right.
Hi, John. Hi, John.
So, because we have to move on. Next topic. I'm sorry I said, I won't take too much of your time, but sige lang, last topic because it's hot and I don't get you on this show every day, okay? College sports in the off season, especially basketball, has been more than just an off season. I mean, we've had the USD bubble, we've had recruitment wars here and there. Just today, Bismarck Lina announced he's going over to UP. This is another fill in the blanks thing. College basketball in this pandemic has been blank.
That's right. It's a priority of our country to put health number one.
Yes,
And with collegiate sports, you're talking about kids who are 21,
yes,
19, 18, and we don't want to put especially the youth at risk. So we have to consider what the IATF tells us. And at the moment, only professionals involved in sports are allowed to compete. At some point, when things are better, when things are stable, then we will see collegiate sports come back into the scene. But at the moment, let's be patient. We don't want to put any of our college players at risk. But at the same time, as you mentioned, Rico, the college teams aren't just sitting by idly. They're very active in terms of recruitment. Um, I just want to make a point here, that you know the players who play for schools, they are student athletes, and that's very, very important for them to understand and appreciate. um, while it is true that you have to have a balance, I think some athletes are now thinking, or some
student
student
athletes.
athletes
Yes,
are now thinking that being athletes surpass what their obligations are as students. Ako ang feeling ko, dapat 50-50.
okay.
In terms of what happened in UST, the students felt that since their coach would no longer be around, so their careers as athletes would be in limbo.
Yeah,
So they had to make a choice. They realize what they need to be as students, but they also realize what they need to be as athletes. When that equation got um, hindi na naging balance, got imbalance because nawala yung kanilang coach, then they started to look for a way to be able to make up for that balance on the athlete side of the equation. So you cannot blame the athletes for that. At the same time, we have to also remind the athletes that they are student athletes and not just athletes. And let me also say that the proliferation of agents in
Yun.
the collegiate level is something that should be rethought. I honestly think,
Okay.
because there was even a move for high school players to have agents, which I think
Ooh.
should not be. Should not be. I mean, in in all, my conscience tells me that it should not be. Um, Let us not commercialize and professionalize and take away the purity of college sports. I understand that it's important for collegiate athletes to have representation. And my proposal, or rather my idea, is to disallow college players to have agents until they are seniors or are in their last year in
Yeah.
the UAAP
Yeah.
or NCAA. Then they can have their agents. But before that, my feeling is dapat siguro when schools recruit players to join their schools, the schools should talk to parents,
Yeah.
not agents.
Okay.
The problem is some parents are also their agents. You know, I would like to give the parents the benefit of the doubt that the parents are there not to look after themselves as parents and their livelihood, but to see what is the best for their children. If they have a gifted son or daughter, gifted in terms of being an athlete, I think every parent's obligation is to make sure that that son or daughter should have a good education, aside from getting the opportunity to become a top level athlete. Um, so, my humble opinion is I think that student athletes should not have agents until the last year of their playing career in college. Having said that, I also think that student athletes should not be allowed to have commercial endorsements until their last year in college, because these commercial endorsements just takes away the focus of a student athlete. I mean, you know, I know it means a lot to student athletes because it's money coming in, but they're not professionals. They're
Okay. Yeah.
student athletes.
Yeah.
They're student athletes. They should focus on their books. You know, there was one story that was told to me about a student athlete who was recruited by a UAAP school. And for the first couple of weeks, that student athlete was not reporting for class.
Uy.
And so the student monitor went over to the student athlete and asked, Bata, ba't hindi ka pumapasok sa klase? And you know what that guy said? Bakit? Kailangan ba?
Yun.
It's an orientation, it's an attitude. Student athletes think that they're recruited to play for a school because of their athletic ability. Yes, that's true. But they must understand they also have an obligation to themselves and to their parents to get maximum education. While they're in school, they should try to learn and expand their knowledge for the future beyond their their athletic careers. That's just my humble opinion. I have a lot of very good friends who are agents, who are athletic
Oh yeah.
agents, sports agents, and that might be, out to strangle me at this point. But I'm saying this from the heart, and I'm also saying this because, as everybody knows, I'm involved with the UAP school.
Yes.
I am a LaSalle diehard. I graduated from LaSalle elementary, high school, and college, and I've served my school in many ways, and in any way that I can help my school produce good student athletes, I will be there for my school. But I have my principles.
Yes.
As I know, the other schools have their own principles. But I think it's time that all the schools should all get together and start thinking, let's take away this crass commercialism that's destroying the purity of college sports. Um, for for these for these student athletes to be commercial endorsers before their senior years, it's just not in keeping with what we should value in student athletes. And I think, you know we should ingrain in the student athlete's mind the importance of having a good education, because you know we don't want to see these athletes throw away their education or waste the time that they have in school, become PBA players, and then when their careers are over, if they get injured and they're no longer able to play, what can they do? What can
Precisely.
they fall back on?
Yeah.
They won't have an education to fall back on, so they've got to think long term. And I'm appealing to the parents. Think of your children's future. Don't think short term. Don't think, we might be able to get a car or a house and lot now from my son from this school. Think about the education that boy, that daughter can have in playing for that school. That's the most important thing, and that's just my take.
No, I agree with you completely. I'm probably more old school than you in the sense na, well, the USNCA doesn't even allow allowances. Of course, there
Yes,
are talks about underground in the States, but they
yes,
have control measures for those. Then the loose talk, even here in college basketball, is that the money floating around isn't too far behind that of the PBA. These are the stocks. But I'd like to share this thought. This is from somebody who we both admire and quote a lot also, Quinito. Attorney
hmm
Vic Africa. The student athlete balance should be in the school sports philosophy and relate to the coaches, the players, the other students, the alumni, the parents, and the fans. They should all be of one mind and heart in this sports philosophy. You just quoted Attorney Vic around, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago?
he's my text mate.
Okay.
Attorney Vic, thank you very much for your words of wisdom.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
he Attorney Vic is so insightful, and what you admire about him is that he sees the purity of sports,
Oh, yes.
and
Yes.
and we're not seeing that in many of our sports leaders and even our athletes right now. I mean, sad to say. And to see a quote from Attorney Vic is very refreshing, and and very inspiring, because it makes us want to think that there is hope out there,
Yes. Yes.
that we can get there. We can purify sports in the way that it should.
Another favorite quote of mine from Attorney Vic, he always, semper optimum meum,
Hmm.
always giving my best. And that's the value of sports. It may not result to a medal or a trophy, but for as long as I always give my best, and that's what sports is all about.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and true enough, for that, no, Kinito, wow, it's 7:25, 1 hour 25. I said I'll max out at 1:30 right now,
Yeah.
but it's been an hour and a half of fun, an hour and a half of learning from you, and I don't know how to thank you for this. No, say, like, when I saw you wearing in red and I was in red, I said I'm in good vibes tonight. This is going to be a good chat.
Well,
But
I should thank you. I should thank you, Rico, for this opportunity, because it gives me a chance to reconnect with Cebu media, my friends. A shout out here to my very dear friend Bidoy Aldaguer, whom
of
I
course,
miss so much. At least I'm in touch with his relatives here in Metro Manila. But it broke my heart when Ala closed shop. But you know that Mr. Aldaguer will always still be there for Philippine sports. I think more than being the headmaster of the Ala stable. Let's face it, Bidoy is a pure sports diehard. He's a
yeah, yeah,
fan.
yeah.
He loves sports. He was involved in sports because of his passion for boxing, and because his heart opened up to the less privileged. He wanted to give the less fortunate of our countrymen an opportunity to make a better life for themselves by becoming boxers, by becoming athletes. And, that was Bidoy's mission. And I miss him dearly. And as well as you, Rico, I haven't seen you face to face in ages. John, who checked in also earlier. I also remember when I was invited to speak before the
Yes.
Cebu sports writers,
Yes.
and I thank San Miguel for bringing me over. I hope there will be another opportunity like that, because it's these vehicles like what we're having now. These are golden opportunities to interact, because I learn from you guys, and and life is all about progressing, learning, evolving, and making ourselves better, so that we can be of better use to our countrymen, to be of
I
better service.
Certo. So once again, thank you very much, Quinito. What else is there to say? But you owe me one. We still need to talk about boxing. It's a totally different topic
What? Oh
outright.
my gosh, that's another hour and a
That's
half.
another hour now for boxing. But
John Real
I'll book
Casimero, Mark Bagsayo. Oh,
precisely.
we have so many things. Pumir Marshall,
Yeah,
so many topics.
I will book a date for that for you, and I'll
All
text
right.
you in advance for that. All right. So once again, thank you very much, Quinito. Before we go, I'd like to show our viewers what we have in store for you next week. No, so we could flash our slides next week. Next week we have, by the way, somebody who you are very familiar with, Quinito. You talked about Cebu producing players, and there you have it right there. Jolas will be with
Wow.
us next week. All right. Then for the
A
next
legend.
succeeding weeks after Jolas, we're bringing on board Coach Oliver Almadro. Then on the 12th, we have Butch Antonio and Coach Jong Yu Chico. So that's September 28th, October 5, and October 12 here on Bleacher Talk Ghost Lives. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank you for joining us. All of you in the comment section, I'm so sorry we cannot put your comments and all thoughts right here, but we hope you enjoyed tonight. I certainly enjoyed it. I learned a lot. And once again, thank you very much, Quinito Henson, for joining us tonight. We'll set another date for boxing. We'll talk about that for another hour and a half later on. And that's it for us here. Thank you very much. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bleacher Talk Goes Live. Bye, Quinito. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.